Caitlin Clark to the New York Liberty? Confirmed? You guys? For real? I could have really clickbaited the title to this one. Anyhow, there was a photo circulating, went viral, of Caitlin Clark in the bowels of the Barclays Center with Liberty coach Sandy Brondello and Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. I'm just having a little fun because it shows you the status that the WNBA has reached when all these old school NBA free agency rumors start to make their way to the W. And it's not like Caitlin Clark is a free agent or is leaving the Fever anytime soon, if ever, because she's said in the past she wants to stay in Indiana forever. But I thought it was pretty funny just to see the wild discourse online because fans tend to get carried away. And there you see it. Sandy Brondello, hand on Caitlin Clark's shoulder. Brianna Stewart there. Sabrina Ionescu there. The Caitlin Clark's agent, Erin Kane, is there. We'll get back to that in a second. But Sandy Brondello did show legitimate love to Caitlin Clark. I mean, Caitlin, speculating about Caitlin Clark playing for a team in the future is just silly at this juncture. But the Liberty have shown her love. We've seen that as a bit of a theme. There was the moment between Stewie and Clark when Clark came back from injury the first time. And then there were some nice words. I missed the moment myself of them posted up there for a second. But there were some nice words from Liberty coach Sandy Brondello that I did capture. And I thought they were, it was a good sentiment. She's going to coach her in the All-Star game. And before the game, she lamented the idea that Clark was not going to play in front of the Barclays Center crowd.
Yeah, you never want to see a player get injured. And, a player like Caitlin coming back has had a few injuries this year. She's a great player. It would have been good for our craft to see her, but hopefully they get to see her after post-All-Star. We get to play them again. As for the All-Star, I'm excited to get to know her a little bit. I think that's the part of the All-Star, is going to coach players that you haven't coached before and get them to know them a little bit and enjoy the whole celebration.
So, I mean, I think that's obviously more what that photo was about. Sandy Brondello, Caitlin Clark getting a little chummy before they're linked up a little bit more over All-Star weekend. Obviously, Brianna Stewart, a big part of the CBA negotiations. Caitlin Clark has said she will be a part of those CBA negotiations that are taking place in Indianapolis. As far as the game itself goes, there's not really much to say. This is one of the rare instances where I would say the pregame media availability was more interesting than the postgame media availability. Stephanie White, Ari McDonald, and Sophie Cunningham were the players who were there postgame for the Fever. And they seemed a little upset at the performance and not particularly chipper. Coach White hammered home the idea of being consistent again and not being soft and all that. But I just kind of throw that one in the garbage for the Fever. Of course they were going to lose that game. I asked Erin McDonald about the schedule. She was like, we're pros. We got to go through it, blah, blah, blah. But when Caitlin Clark is out, newsflash, the Fever are not a more dangerous team without Caitlin Clark. Proof again. And when you're playing back-to-back on the road against the defending champs, it might go like that. And I just don't know if there's anything to take from the game beyond that. But to go to the pregame for a second, some of the things that did stand out. I mentioned Erin Kane there in that first photo. And let's take that seriously for a second. Because when Stephanie White talked about Caitlin Clark's All-Star availability, that was a little interesting to me. My ears perked up at part of her answer because she mentioned Caitlin Clark's team making that decision.
The most important thing for me was just making sure that she was okay. Anybody who's been injured, as most of us have, right? It's being injured and continuing to have setbacks is frustrating. Mentally, emotionally, oftentimes being injured is isolating. So, from my standpoint, the primary conversations that we've had last night and today are just checking in. Are you good? How can we help? We're going to continue to stay the course. We've got you. We're supporting you. Caitlin and her team will make decisions when it comes to All-Star. And for me, it's a big deal for us to have All-Star in Indianapolis. And of course, with Caitlin being a focal point of all of that. as the coach of the Indiana Fever, it's not a bigger deal than our long-term season. But it's also part of the fun. So, those are conversations that Caitlin will have with her group. I probably won't be a part of those, but we're going to support her no matter what.
So that was interesting. It is a big deal, by the way, for them to have the All-Star game. So that part, yes. And Stephanie White also spun the imaging as good news. It was odd to me that she was questionable, and even at all the designation. Maybe they felt they needed a placeholder out there, but Coach White said it was good news for her. She doesn't make the judgments, but whenever it's a day-to-day situation. But that sentiment of her team, Caitlin and her team, will make the decision. And that's where Erin Kane being there, the agent being there, stands out to me, because the Fever coach not having any say in that is interesting, or not being a part of that, as she said. And it almost seems to me like Caitlin Clark really wants to do it, and Stephanie White might not want her to do it, and she's distancing herself from it. I don't know. I don't know how that goes. Obviously, stars of Caitlin Clark's level, sometimes their team does get involved. We've seen that with LeBron James and Rich Paul and all that on the NBA side. But that sort of stood out to me a little bit. Perhaps Caitlin Clark tries to give it a go in the three-point contest and then make a appearance in the All-Star game, get off a 4-point shot. I don't know. I'll be on my way out to Indianapolis, but I did put a pin in that answer to get back to it, because I found that intriguing. But the rest of the sentiment from Stephanie White obviously makes a lot of sense. And Caitlin Clark, you could see the struggle on her face the other night, wanting to be back out there, not knowing if she's going to be able to compete in the All-Star festivities, and the physicality around the way that Caitlin Clark is played defensively. That came up pregame as well, which has been a big talking point. And Stephanie White sort of echoed what I've said about that, which is like, eventually it adds up. Caitlin Clark gets overexerted or has to deal with more than, and it's not a direct causation, but perhaps a correlation, or as the coach put it, a factor in what has transpired with Caitlin Clark and the fact that she has suffered numerous injuries. Here was Coach White on that.
It is tough. Certainly someone who has the ball in her hands as much as Caitlin, the physicality that she's experiencing for 40 minutes, it causes you to load differently, causes you to explode differently, it causes you to accelerate and decelerate differently. It's not the free-flowing movement, that we want to see when it comes to freedom of movement. And I think all of those things, at times, while it might not be one blow or another, over time can contribute to that. That's why freedom of movement is a huge emphasis from our coach's standpoint when we have conversations at the league level. So can you point it out to one thing or the other? No, but I do think the physicality with which teams are able to play with her is a factor.
And I thought that was a good answer from Fever coach Stephanie White, even if she won't be Caitlin Clark's coach over All-Star weekend. That will be Sandy Brondello, of course, if Caitlin Clark is able to participate at all. But she certainly got a little Liberty love in Brooklyn.